It's just the
Yes,
TikTok.
yes.
Yeah. Just go down the TikTok. Do a Google search for TikTok.
Is that what happens like when we get old and we're going to call it the TikTok? Like my parents will, or like parents of, my friends call Facebook the Facebook,
I think so.
That's when you know you're old.
I mean, I'm going to call it the TikTok until Justin Timberlake tells me to drop it.
Just listen to Justin. What Justin says goes.
You're listening to the Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
Woohoo! Welcome back to the Janchi Show. I just took that from you guys because you were like, I don't know.
That was good.
Okay. Welcome back to the Janchi Show. I am Nathan, and I'm starting over because I lost my train of thought. I am here with KJ and Patrick. Say hi.
Hi.
안녕.
안녕하세요.
Good. We are the Janchi Show, and we are a podcast with 3 Korean American adoptees. What does Janchi mean, Patrick?
Janchi means, well, the definition that we tend to go with is celebration or feast with many people. In this case, 3. But essentially, we
4,
come together.
sir.
Oh yeah, 4. Sorry, Jerry. So
What? No,
wait.
I was talking about
Oh
our
wait, you're
guest.
talking about Diana. Anyways,
I mean, she's not here now, but she's about to be here.
That is true.
She's waiting in the green room.
Yes.
All right.
She's waiting.
5 of us.
The
patiently.
air conditioning is on.
The
Like,
AC is on. I can hear it.
there are
I can
snacks
feel it.
in the room. She's just waiting
They
for the
are-
green light.
And we are going to come together and feast on those snacks because that is what Janchi means to us, the people. Eating together and celebrating our identities and the journey that we're on to discover and uncover and reclaim those identities. Period. Send. The email has been written.
So we banter, we interview, and we eat. That's pretty much
Cool.
All right, yeah, great talk, everyone.
Yeah, good job.
We'll
Break.
see you next week. I'm just kidding.
That was the best intro we've
I was
ever
like,
done.
you've just done a 3-minute intro, and that's it. That's the whole show. Yep.
That's the whole show. KJ, tell the people what we who we're talking to today and what we talk about.
So today we have the incredible pleasure of speaking with Diana Albrecht, who is joining us for the end of Pride Month, but specifically to talk about her story as an adoptee, as a member of the queer community, and how wrestling with the intersections of those 2 identities has helped define and make who she is today. It's a really, really fantastic interview, and we're super grateful for her for reaching out and saying, hey, I heard that y'all wanted to help make a safe space and you needed someone to help you do that. And so I'm willing to help you do that. So we are very grateful for her stepping in and helping us learn more about the intersection of adoptees' identities and queer identities, because the 3 of us don't identify as queer at all. So yeah, but we know that the importance of allyship is large. I feel like I'm talking bad today. But my talking is subpar, and I question again why I have a podcast.
Oh, no, not at all. However, this is your last podcast in old Missouri.
Oh, dip. That is accurate. Although
Yep.
this is not the last time that you will hear me in Missouri, but this
No.
is
This is the last
time
episode you'll be
chronologically
recording.
in
Yes.
real time, not in podcast time.
Yes,
So-
the next time will be in Texas.
Well, the next
Good luck
time
with the move.
we have like the whole next month, it'll be all stuff that I recorded in Missouri. Is this good podcasting material?
Sure,
It's
people
fine.
Patrick
people
is
need to
like,
know. This is what we're talking about.
You're
Transparency.
losing me.
Everyone
I was
wants to
confused
know.
about the timeline of you.
Well, so
being-
the timeline is that right now we're recording on June 16th,
Mhm.
and you'll hear this on June 23rd, which is the day. Like I will literally be in the car heading to Dallas. But
Yeah.
then the next month's worth of content will all have been things that we recorded previously, so it'll all
Sure.
be
That
stuff.
makes
It'll still be
good
KJ in
sense.
Missouri.
that
So-
makes sense.
So,
Yeah.
for anyone looking at that confusing timeline, you should just ignore it because most of the movies out there have time travel and stuff like that. So,
Yeah,
It's fine.
it's
Just
the
watch
multiverse.
it's all
Loki.
good. Just ignore it and just accept it.
Just watch Loki, which I'm almost positive they're using to set up where none of the MCU movies have to be contained to one universe. But we can get into that on Nerding Out with Patrick and whoever else wants to nerd out.
Welcome to the Janchi multiverse.
Yep. So, anyways, if confusing timelines aren't your thing, that is unfortunate because we do get into some timeline discussion in our interview with Diana. But it's really helpful, and she does such a great job sharing her story, and we're really grateful for her. So let's roll the tape right now.
We are back with the Janchi Show. We have a wonderful interview today. Please welcome Diana Albrecht. Diana, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thanks
so many
for having
people
me.
crashed because they're clapping.
Yes,
Hooray.
I think that's my new.
I mean, I'm sorry.
I think that's my
but,
new
you know.
thing. Is I'm going to say please welcome so everyone can be excited. It's a way to
Yeah.
hype
I
the crowd.
technically
up.
never really clapped on our show. Should add like
We're a clap track.
I don't know.
You want to do a clap track?
Yeah, a little clap
Ooh.
track. We've never actually added that or had any clapping.
Well, I don't think we will. Well, Diana,
probably not.
thank you so much for joining us. To kick it off the way we do all of our interviews, share as much or as little as you want about your adoption story.
All right, the Adoptee Basics. I was adopted from Seoul at the age of 5 months. Apparently, I used to tell people that I was born in an airplane.
Nice.
Yeah, just like the things you say as a kid when you're an adoptee, you just like don't understand, what actually
that
happened.
was back then. That wasn't like a recent. You didn't just like,
I still tell people I was born in an airplane.
Why not?
Let's see. My dad is also a Korean adoptee, which is truly wild when I tell other adoptees that my dad's also a Korean adoptee. And my brother is also an adoptee. He was a local adoption though, but he is biracial. So another stupid thing I said when I was younger is that my brother, my dad, and I all were unwanted children, and now we're a wanted family together.
Wow, that's equal parts tragic and cute.
Just making comedy off my trauma. I thought it was funny, and then my mom she got pretty mad at me for repeatedly saying that and told me I wasn't allowed to say that anymore.
Talk a little bit about. I mean, that's an interesting family dynamic, and I know that. I think you've shared it before, or at least I've been privy to it, but I was wondering if you share just a little bit about that dynamic, especially from this adoptee standpoint, and as growing up in Minneapolis, where technically there are many, many Korean adoptees.
Yeah, we're the land of 10,000 cads, apparently. I don't know. I think the initiative or sentiment that the adoption agency had was, placing Asian children in Asian identifying families, in theory, that sounded great. But I think what was lacking was an actual cultural understanding and respect, frankly, that my dad just didn't get because my grandparents are very well-intending German white Christian folks. And, I don't think that I necessarily gained anything in the way that people might assume that, you have, a dad that looks like you. That's so awesome. You don't have to deal with identity issues because you have family that looks like you. And that wasn't the case. And I think any, conversation that we may have had about all three of our Asian identities were just, I don't know, we made our Asian identities kind of the butt of every single joke that we may have said, and that was the extent of our conversations, right? So I can't necessarily blame my parents for be mad at them now because they just truly just didn't know. But I don't think that our household was necessarily Asian, our Asianness was a safe place in my household.
Do you ever joke that your mom was adopted?
No, my mom would joke. She's she would play, whatever. She would just play the card. She's I wish I was adopted or something, or she would, she would just make comments because she is a white woman, I have to worry about sunburn and you three don't, shitty comments like that were just
my skin currently begs to differ.
Yeah. So she always felt like she was the odd one out in our family as, a white woman, which is very interesting. But I just don't think that she realizes that what made her stand out from the rest of us is what all three of us, or at least what I don't want to talk on behalf of my brother or my dad, but at least what I just disliked about myself when I was younger.
So, as you were growing up in this dynamic and growing up in Minneapolis, were you able to, outside of your family, like find any influence from culture or anything like that, able to connect in any way growing up, or was that something that you didn't start exploring until later?
Until like 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Yeah, no. There were a few other Asian adoptees in like my elementary school that I went to. There's specifically like two sisters from China, and so I was friends with the girl in ninth grade, and they had hosted a kind of a student teacher from China. So I remember like going over to their house and having, I think she went by Happy was her name, having like Happy teach us like how to make like Chinese dumplings, right? Like properly. And I just thought that was like the coolest thing in the world. And, as much as my mom, tried making like japchae at home or like other things like that, it wasn't the same. And I don't think I had the outlets of seeing other, Asian adults or Asian people that looked like me in my childhood.
So, when was that first time that you did start? You said 2 to 3 years ago, but like moving through
Mm-hmm.
your childhood and progressing out past that stage. When was the first time that you started to maybe either identify as Asian or start to engage within that community?
Yeah, so pre-pandemic, so I'm an art director professionally, and pre-pandemic, I was traveling to New York City every month to do photo shoots. And I don't know, people want to like say that Minneapolis is not a very diverse city, and like it's not, but it is if you like try hard enough to put yourself in diverse spaces and in circles. But I think what struck me about New York is that like, the hotel I stayed at is in Soho, which is right next to Chinatown, and just like seeing so many Asian bodies walking down the street, just like living their life, and like kids to like old people and, everyone in between, that was really eye-opening for me. And I ended up going to kind of like a chill party barbecue in Bushwick. A photo assistant had invited me. She immigrated from China a few years ago, or like for college. So she's been, in the States for, probably like 5 years. And she had Asian friends. And that to me was something I like never really had, is a group of Asian friends. And I remember at this party, the host of the party was this woman named Sally and her partner at the time. And Sally's Vietnamese and her partner's white. And all the white people were on one side of the, the
It's like
backyard of
middle school
Bushwick's not
dance,
very
but
large.
ethnically divided, not gender divided.
Exactly,
All right.
exactly. There was plenty room for Jesus at this Bushwick barbecue.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Oh man.
Yeah. But all the Asian people on one side and all the white people were on the other side. And I just remember, like, if I were home here in Minneapolis, I would feel so uncomfortable and I would just want to run over to like the Asian people. Whereas here in New York, when there were like cool Asians and not just like nerdy or dorky Asians, I was like, okay, like I can maybe do this. And one of the people in that group, Jeffrey, he's in my book. He's become one of my dearest friends. He's a Korean adoptee. So I think in meeting Jeffrey and having conversations with him, that really set the tone for, all right, let's, I guess, do this.
So, perfect segue. Meeting Jeffrey and learning a little more about his story, and I would guess resonating with what he was saying and the experiences you were sharing. Was that the impetus for Placed? And is Placed something that was kind of beginning steps, or was that like after you'd had more conversations?
No, Placed was like beginning steps. And I think what is interesting, or well, one of the many things that are interesting about Placed is that like it took me like 22 months to do the whole thing, right? So there's 11 written profiles, one including my own. But the interviews are spaced out between like, I don't know, 15 months maybe, so well over a year. And like the order in which the stories are laid out in the book are pretty much chronological order to when I interviewed these people. And so Jeffrey was my first interviewee for Placed, and just the way he was able to articulate some of his Korean adoptee experiences, but then also be like kind of a little jaded and maybe just a little cautious of the whole thing. And he's also queer too, so I'd yet to meet like another queer Korean adoptee. Just like hearing, and he's a little bit older than I am too, right? So he just was like my wise, I call him my adoptee trauma fairy godmother.
There you go.
So he's kind of like, held my hand throughout this whole process. But I just, up until that point, I'd literally never had another conversation with a Korean adoptee, and especially someone who was a little bit further down the road in their like identity journey, if you will. So that just like really opened my eyes to, okay, like I guess there are stories here and people want to tell their stories.
So I think that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about it the most. And I think that's something you say at the top of the book, is that these stories are pretty much laid out chronologically, and we get to go on your journey with you in terms of the writing style and like how you're processing these things. What was something, once you got to the end, once you were wrapping up the 22-month journey to get from that first conversations to like publication, what was the biggest thing that you took from that for yourself personally, out of all these other people's stories that you're able to share and be a part of?
I mean, I could like take this in so many different like avenues, right? Like I learned a lot. But I think the biggest surprise for me at the end was, for whatever reason, I placed this really high expectation on myself that at the end of this project, I would have my shit figured out, right? And I did not give myself as much grace and kindness and love as I gave the rest of the project participants. And I think because of that, when I didn't come out of, the 3-day like opening event weekend feeling like on top of the world, like I was actually like fell into a depressive state for a few weeks because I'd placed so much pressure on myself at the end of it, right? And I don't know, I think that's just part of being an adoptee, or at least the adoptees that I've talked to and what I've like settled on for right now, is that like there's just going to be this flux, and sometimes I'm going to be confused, and sometimes I'm going to have answers, and sometimes I'm going to want to be super involved in the Korean adoptee community, and other times I just want to, pause off, let me just live my life, so that was like the biggest kind of surprise for me at the end of the project.
How did you go through the selection of the 22 participants in the book?
So there's 10 participants plus me, so 11.
Okay, 10, 11.
Some of the people, most of the local people, I found on like Facebook and like through adoptee groups, just because I literally didn't know any adoptees prior to this, and Jeffrey, I guess. Some of the like out of state folks, there's a few folks from New York and one who lives in LA. I met them through connections of Jeffrey, and like, just random local connections. So I didn't really have a personal tie with anybody except for Jeffrey.
Oh, okay. And was when was the timeline of the book created?
I started at the like January 1, 2019, basically.
Oh, okay.
And then was supposed to launch like March 2020, but something else happened.
Mm-hmm.
So then we actually launched end of September of 2020.
All right.
So, Diana, we've talked a little bit about your book Placed, and we've talked obviously about your relationship with Jeffrey. And you were really gracious, actually. I don't know the full backstory, but you filled out on our guest forum, hey, it's June, and y'all had said that you would like to interview an adoptee about like kind of their queerness.
Yeah,
is that the
good
right
job.
way to say that? Sure. Anyways, so, and you were just like, yeah, we should talk about that. That's a story that needs to be heard. So I'm interested. One of the things that I have thought about in my own process of reckoning with myself as an adoptee and this journey of, coming out of the fog, is it like in the language, but also for me experientially and what I can imagine feels like a sort of coming out journey. And I'm curious, without really, I mean, unless you want to, but do you see any parallels between your experience coming out sexually and coming out as an adoptee, or are those like very separate things, or I don't know, like what's the relationship with
This
those?
is, yes, this is like the whole like thesis of like things that have been bubbling in my brain.
You said thesis a couple of times, and that's really not how we roll as the Janchi Show. So if you could just dumb it down, that would be great.
Okay, I may need to do like a queer dictionary for y'all. Yeah.
Wait, are you implying that 3 straight cisgendered men don't know how to talk about queer people?
Yeah.
Come on. I very much appreciate
Not
it.
at all.
Please educate me.
No, I was telling Patrick, like, I've never like talked out loud really about these like thoughts that I've had. And like Jeffrey and I touched on it when I saw him a few weeks in New York. But like, you know, these thoughts are based off my experience as a cis queer Korean adoptee. And like, I do not claim any sort of like expertise and like queer world or like adoptee stuff either. Like I say I'm a like gay like a gay baby, and like maybe in my adoptee life I'm a toddler, but like in my terrible twos, you know. So like I'm still just like constant temper tantrums, you know. But my temper tantrums are like existential, like mind fucks and like deep conversations with myself, you know.
Wait, that's your temper tantrum?
Yeah, you know.
It's like, yeah, I just get real dark and intellectual with myself. I was like slamming doors, flipping tables. That
I just
kind
get
of business.
real
No,
emo,
it's
you know. Just resort back to my emo days.
The early 2000s were deeply formative.
Honestly, I think 2003 was the best year of music for like emo and pop punk stuff. So you can just,
I like that.
that can be a whole another
We got to bring
segment
Brandon
of the
back
show.
on for a musical.
We'll get into it
for a
later.
Musical
It's
revisited.
Yeah, exactly. Some more. We'll need some more music professionals for that one.
Yeah, but to your question, I think there are a lot of like parallels between like the maybe oppression or repression of like my adoptee and queer identities, and I'm just now realizing that a lot of this, you know, the systems and factors in play just contributed to like me not identifying as a Korean or an Asian person, and then me not necessarily realizing I was queer up until like very recently, right? And so I think like we live in a world that like glorifies whiteness and straightness, right? And anything that's like the norm or expectation. And I don't know, there's like this term that likes to get thrown around on like TikTok a lot these days. I just get all my information from TikTok. Or my girlfriend's TikTok. Not actually, because I don't have a TikTok. She just sends me things, right? There's this term called compulsory heterosexuality. And in like a heteronormative culture that we live in, it assumes that like straightness is the default, the norm, or it's what's expected. Whereas, you know, the feminists and the critics like argue that like heterosexuality is like more of like a political institution that oppresses women, blah 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 blah. But I think basically it's like because straightness or heterosexuality is the expected and the norm, we're taught to be straight essentially, right? Or like my parents didn't, you know, put me in environments where like queerness or like same-sex couples were necessarily celebrated, right? And I don't know, like there was never a moment to like challenge these identities because I didn't know anything else, whereas I thought like whiteness and straightness was the expectation, and I assimilated into the white straight environments that we all like grew up in, you know. And like in talking with a lot of the participants for Placed, you know, a lot of those folks talk about like, you know, maybe we performed whiteness because we didn't know any better, or because we didn't have the grown-ups or the, you know, role models in our life that could, you know, we didn't have Asian role models or grown-ups in our life that could teach us any of these things. And I think that's similar to like queerness and like adoptee stuff, right? Like other than my dad, like I didn't grow up seeing any Asian adults. And my dad is like a straight white, or sorry, he's a straight cis man. And obviously I am not that. So like if I don't see, if I don't see myself in older Asian folks, older Korean adoptees, I don't necessarily see a future for myself. In Jae-hoon, in my book, they talk about this, like they didn't expect themselves to like live past 40, and it wasn't like a suicidal thing. They are non-binary, and they said the only like examples of like Asian femininity was like Lucy Liu in Charlie's Angels, right? And she didn't fit that mold. And it's kind of like, it's similar for like queer folks too, because we lost an entire generation of people due to like, the inaction of the government for the AIDS crisis, due to suicide or murder or like whatever, right? And like we don't have like histories or legacies of like queer people to look up to, and we don't have that as adoptees either, because the Korean War ended in 1953. So like what is the oldest that a Korean adoptee could be, My dad's 58 and he's the oldest adoptee that I know.
Right. I mean, I think that's something that we've talked about on the show, and something that I really discovered as I dove into kind of the history of adoption is, they're the first and second generations of Korean adoptees, or really any adoptee from any Asian or other country that comes to America. They are almost burdened with having to retell or share that experience in the future. But those first people don't know that that's what they need to do, because like you said, there's no role model or there's no person to look to prior. So we are now, I think where we are at is a really fortunate position to be able to have seen some people do stuff and write stuff and talk about stuff, and for us to be able to do that, like the laying of the foundation, I think that every person needs in order to move forward or to be able to understand themselves and reckon with their identity. We are in the midst of that right now, and I think it's such a short history. It's there's not much to go on, so it's not like we have decades on decades of things to take in. And I think that's something that's interesting in your position specifically at the intersection of all these different things, is that you've going through these journeys of like understanding your queer identity, understanding your Asian identity, and then understanding your identity as an adoptee, all kind of at the same time. You talked about after placed kind of stepping away and going into a little bit of a depressive state, just because you didn't necessarily get what you thought was going to come of that. What has it been like to go through all of these things kind of at the same time? Are you moving between each to like work on one thing at a time, or is it like drinking out of the fire hose, everything at once?
I mean, I take it as it comes, right? So like last night I went to a bar in Minneapolis with my friend Micah, who is a Chinese adoptee. They are non-binary. And they're like, hey, I've got a bunch of gay Asians for us to hang out with. And my mind was blown, because I didn't think that we existed.
Right.
And I walk into their friend's house before we went to the bar, and they're not adoptees, but like they were making spam musubi for like the protesters in Uptown right now. And I just don't think I've ever really walked into a house where cool Asian people were just making musubi, and like, it's like the intersection of like social justice and activism and like cooking and like Asianness, that I was like, this is so cool, But it was funny. Like we took like an Asian photo last night, and like I just thought that was so funny and interesting. Like you could see the rest of the bar like turn around and smile in a like this is really awesome that like y'all are here and like y'all have a community type of thing. And it's just nothing that I've literally ever experienced before. It was pretty cool.
Okay, so I'm curious, Diana. I just wanted to get like a timeline. Again, you don't have to go into detail that you don't want to, but it sounded like from something that you said earlier that your queer identity was fairly new. Is that accurate, or have you?
Yes and no. Yeah, if you want a timeline. So I remember it was like maybe 2016 or 17. I was living in the apartment that I live in now, but I was living with my then boyfriend, and I was doing a collaboration with two other like Minneapolis creatives, essentially. One was like a proper like fine artist. Another is a local journalist named Jana Shortall, who's gotten like national recognition for her appearance, essentially. For context, she like cut her hair short, like I don't know, like however many years ago, and wears like cool thick glasses, and like her wardrobe is more masculine presenting. And you know, so she's got national recognition for like being herself. But like Jana was in my apartment. We were doing, you know, taking photos for this art collab, and I had never been in the presence of like a very outwardly and proud queer woman before. And all my friends know, and my girlfriend knows too, like I have a crush on her, but I think it's because like she was like the first example of like me seeing an out woman and like her just being cool, you know, and her being respected, and her, you know, being like a pioneer and like a trailblazer in her industry. And I never even seen that ever. And so like since then, since that happened, I was like, you know, I have a little girl crush on Jana, but I didn't really do anything about it because I don't know. I think at that time too, like maybe like fast forward to like 2017, 2018, you know, like Korean culture was like getting quote unquote cool, you know, K-pop and Korean fusion cooking and all these things. And I don't want to say I got annoyed with all like the cute white girls being really into like K-pop and like Korean food. But I think I was just like a little bit jealous because they were allowed to like a culture that I didn't think I was allowed to like because it was dorky. So I didn't want to like tap into like, you know, this queer identity because I had only dated men before. And in my mind, I was like, I'm appropriating like queer culture by being like a quote unquote straight girl, you know, experimenting with other, you know, women or non-binary folks. And
Interesting.
like, because I knew what it was like for my culture to be disrespected, and I didn't want it to be like a Katy Perry, I kissed a girl because it's fun, and then like peace out, bye, you know.
Yeah.
And that's literally why I didn't do anything about it for like years after that.
So you, I guess, had that first mirror and that first moment, right, of seeing just like a queer woman who is proud of her identity and her identity being a non-issue, essentially, right? So you're just like, yeah, this is fantastic. So that was 2016, and then when did you start? I guess like coming like. How much later, I guess, did you come out and just be like, yeah, I'm queer, I'm here, this is who I am? Like, when did that language enter into your vocabulary?
I don't think it was like a, you know, light bulb like coming out moment, like, you know, our
It wasn't like a single moment of conversion. You're like, hello world.
Yes. No, I don't think it was that. It was me putting myself in more diverse spaces and like traveling to cities and countries that queerness was very normalized. And then let's see, I probably started actually, I would like change my like Tinder or Bumble or Hinge or whatever to like everybody. But then I got really scared because I didn't see, I think dating apps in general are terrible, right? But like, oh yeah, like
KJ's been married since he was like 5. KJ and Sarah,
right?
Yeah. The last time I had to date someone, I was in high school, and the year was 2000.
Oh wow!
So I don't know what dating is like.
So you
adults,
got Facebook and you immediately were in a relationship. You didn't even have time to be. Your status has always been the same.
Basically, yeah.
How long did it take for y'all to change your Facebook status to like in a relationship, like officially?
Probably not long, because I think I told my now wife that I loved her like a month into dating, and she was like, okay. And I was like, I do. And I was like,
well, you beat me. I was gonna say mine's 3 months, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know. Sarah can correct me.
In lesbian world, we call that U-hauling.
U-hauling. Interesting.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's like a stereotype that like lesbian or queer women just like fall in love real fast and they like say I love you and like move in together within like
I am familiar
2
with
days
that.
of dating, you know?
Okay.
Yeah,
I am also familiar with it. I feel like I've U-hauled before.
All right.
I was not a big Facebook person. I got rid of it for a long time, so I didn't worry about the status stuff. But I don't even think I'm in a relationship right now, and I'm getting married in 2 months. So
Bro.
on there. So I don't know. Yeah.
Wow.
I think I'm off of that.
So I have a question, kind of a follow-up with what KJ's been asking. Your coming out was roughly somewhere around a year and a half ago, but has been ongoing since you said 2016. Your Korean adoptee moments where you've been researching that more was been about 3 years or so.
It's 2019,
ago.
like 3. I mean, it is
2.
3 years ago.
2
Yeah.
years. Yeah,
Two.
I'd say about 2
Yeah.
years
So I
ago.
started placed like very beginning of 2019. And I think I was like, all right, I'm actually going to like start going on dates with women or like AFAB,
Okay.
which is assigned female at birth people, like at the end of 2019. And then pandemic hit.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was just curious, like, where does so now, you know, you got your queer identity. How do you identify now as Asian, or like, are you like, I don't know about saying like Asian American or ethnically Korean? Are you like, yeah, I'm cool with that? Like, where are you at with those identities?
I mean, I say I'm a Korean adoptee. I think it depends on like what space I'm in.
Yeah,
like
sure.
if I'm in a space where I feel like people are cool and they're going to respect, you know, story time, I'll say I'm a Korean adoptee. And when like my Lyft or Uber driver asks me where I'm from and I say, like, I'm from here, I'm from St. Paul. They're like, but no, where are you really from? I'll just say like, I'm from Korea, you know? Yeah, I have no like qualms with like saying like, to me, I don't know. It's all semantics, right? You like Korean American, Asian American. I know like labels like that are very important to some people. But it is interesting how I can flex and assign those labels to myself just depending on what environment I'm in. Yeah.
Has the discovery of the coming out of the fog of the Korean adoption helped with the also your queer identity?
Yeah, I think so.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, or vice versa.
I mean, for Jeffrey, he said he had to figure out his queerness before he figured out his Asianness. And for me, it was I had to figure out my Asianness before I figured out my queerness. I think just because my Asianness is a lot more visible. And maybe that's just like some internalized like homophobia that I have about myself, is that like I pass as like a straight girl, right? Like I wouldn't say I'm like hyper feminine or hyper femme, but like I pass as a straight woman. And so I could hide that part of myself for like a really long time. Whereas I can't really hide that I'm Asian, as much as I probably wanted to for however long. That's why I bleached my hair.
But you could hide that you were a Korean adoptee.
I could. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's similar for me. Like, if people, especially kids, because kids are just known to stare anytime they see something that's different. Anytime a kid would stare at me, I would assume it was because of my hand, not because I was Asian, And so like for me, essentially, and I think for a lot of East Asians, we were essentially white presenting until 2020, And so for me, so I don't know that it was, not necessarily an internalized homophobia or anything. I think it was just like, if you can pass as the quote unquote norm, whether it's compulsory heterosexuality or compulsory whiteness or whatever, then you're just like, well, that's a non-issue. Let's get to the other part of our identity that seems to break the norm, because that is going to get thrown in our faces more often. So I think it is what it is. But yeah, I was curious about like, because for me, wrestling with Asianness has been helped by some of the earlier wrestling that I've done with being disabled, and then accepting myself and using the language of Asian American or Korean American or whatever has then also helped to accept myself as disabled American or just a disabled person and part of that community, So I think that it is semantic, but I think that the language that we choose to use often reflects how we see ourselves, in a way that is really powerful and not always captured by a mirror or a photo or things like that.
Yeah.
So I was just curious about what that journey has been like. Yeah. And so we're recording this in June, which is Pride Month.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Yeah, happy Pride. I was like, we were trying to write copy for Pride Month because we were like, oh shoot, we have a brand now and we should like make this a safe space and have all that. And I was like, I have no experience talking about this. So I don't even know, like, what do you say? But what has Pride Month meant to you, or what does it mean to you as a queer and Asian and adopted woman?
Oh my God, it's like I, have hit my second puberty and everything is finally aligning and I'm just ready to live my best life.
I love that you are at all times a baby, a toddler, and you've also entered second puberty. It's like, here I am, world. Let's
I'm
do
a complicated gal sometimes,
Hell yeah.
No, like it's interesting when I think back, like the most safe and comfortable spaces that I've been in that weren't Asian spaces were like queer spaces. This is before like I've come out, blah, blah, blah. And like that all makes sense now. So like when I would go to Pride parties before, I'd be like, hey, this is fun. I'm just here to support my friends and be a respectful ally. But like this, because obviously Pride didn't happen in the same capacity last year. This is like my first pride in like claiming all of my identities. And I'm really excited about it. And I'm really, really excited that I have queer Asian friends to see at some of these pride parties. Like I was talking to my girlfriend, she is white. I love her. She's white. But, I was texting her. I was like, oh yeah. So I met a bunch of, queer Asians and like, they said that we could come to their pride party. And like, this is really exciting because there's like people like me. And she's, she's the most like encouraging and supportive. She's like, babe, I'm so happy that you like met people that you can connect with, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I'm excited. She's been out for a while. So she's kind of like, she's like, I hate, the commercialization of Pride, blah, blah, blah. She's like, but if you're excited to go to these parties, like, I'll go with you.
I think that commercialization is really a topic at the front of everyone's mind right now, just because not only is everything a lot more heightened just because of like the rise in violence against Asians during the pandemic, or not even just because of like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, but like seeing all of these flaws be brought up of our country be brought up to the surface, it's now makes it seem like you have to perform. And like KJ was just saying, we're trying to think of what to say. And it's like, how in any way is this not performative? Three cis straight men writing this statement about the queer community and like support. It's one thing to support, but it's another thing to appropriately and properly use the right language and to be respectful, like you said, like you've talked about. And I think that something that's really interesting for adoptees is that in my experience over this past year in the community, we're always looking for a safe space. And it's like we've not really had places where we can share where we're worried about someone attacking us for what we are sharing. And unfortunately, as with every community, sometimes it cannot be so safe. So I'm wondering, in your opinion, what do you think needs to happen in the adoptee space to make it safer for queer adoptees to be able to have the type of conversation that we're having now?
Yeah. We could, again, so many possibilities here. I don't know, like, I think for me personally, and I know Patrick, you and I have like thrown some messages back and forth about this, is like, it's almost like a normalization of our existence, right? Like, it's cool that you're interviewing me during Pride Month, but like, can we make it a consistent thing where like, it doesn't have to be, assign a number, but like, a handful of your guests every...
No, fill that quota. Fill that quota.
30% of your guests have to be queer identified, or else the Janchi Show is canceled, and I'm just going to rip y'all to shreds on the internet.
I mean, I will also rip us to shreds if we don't hit 30%. So
that's true. We're always trying to find ways to cancel the show. So this might be the way.
Y'all personally are like trying to cancel your show and find ways to get canceled.
Like, we're just so tired.
Yeah, and just like, I think, like any marginalized person, we all just want to be seen, heard, and loved, right? And so like, it's part of, on y'all for like to be queer ally or allies of the LGBTQIA plus community is like, do educate yourself beforehand and like do the research. You know, there's tons of like fun content on TikTok. I know it's the second time I've referenced TikTok today, and I swear
it's a very niche platform that probably nobody has heard of. So you gotta really plug it because we want to see it take off.
Exactly.
It knows what I like. So. I mean, all it does is show me cooking videos. So I'm just
yeah, but like it's like so hard to find resources or just like content about adoption stuff in general, and then you layer on whatever other identity, whether it's like you are a person with a disability or you are queer or like whatever it is, like how do we have like find the people and the content and the information and like lift that up to like not make it so difficult to find, you know?
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate that you reached out, because that right there is one of the ways that we do want to help is to allow anyone to come on the space. It's not, like you said, we're not trying to look to fill a quota. We're not specifically picking people out of a list. We want people to come to us and want to tell their stories, and we want to hear them, and we hope that our listeners want to hear them as well too.
Yeah,
so
I think what's
that.
hard about it for us is like it is Pride Month, and so like we being 3 straight cisgender dudes, like it's hard to be like, hey, are you gay? Do you want to come on the show and talk about your gay identity? You know what I mean? Like, unless it's Pride Month, in which case we do kind of have like a more natural in, because like we want to be allies and we want to help amplify those voices and center those voices. And we're like, we don't know who we don't know, and we don't even know, like, I don't hang out in a lot of queer spaces in my very small white town in the middle of America, you know? And so I'm just like, how do you even connect with those people and find those things? And so I think the difficult part is like finding that balance really between ignorance and the desire for true allyship. Like it wasn't until we realized, or I guess I realized, I was like, oh, allyship is important as an Asian American. And then I was like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of other identities that could also use some allies, that like I get to play the role of the ally for them, you know? And so I was like, oh yeah, okay. So I think that that's one of the hard things. And, you know, it's just, it takes people like you who are willing to come on to platforms and share their stories, so that others who don't want to share their stories, maybe they aren't as loud, or maybe they have just, more things to do, can be like, this is me too. You know, I can just point to this and do that. So thanks for doing the hard work, the brave work of being on here, telling your story, and also for amplifying and centering other voices in your book, which I think is a really fantastic undertaking. And we're really grateful for you adding to our stories.
Thanks. I think I'll just add to, like, I think because Patrick and I have kind of built up like a kind of back and forth on Instagram, like I know he's a stand-up dude, and that's why I was like, hey, they put out like a pride post, like cool, good for them, but like what do they have to back that up with? And that's why I was kind of like, oh, like I can chat with these guys because I know they're trying, and like I've been meaning to talk about this for a while. I just like didn't know how to, and unfortunately there is not a queer-centered Asian identifying podcast, so just gonna have these conversations with 3 straight guys.
You talked about having not shared your story really at first, and then coming on the show as part of that, placed as part of that, and just like I think that's part of all of our journeys, is navigating ways that where we end up finding our voice. Not necessarily that we'd not ever had one. It's like, how do we find ways to let that out? What advice or what would you say to other adoptees, specifically queer adoptees, who are tentative about sharing, because it is scary and it can be really lonely and intimidating to step out of your comfort zone of, even if it's not comfortable being silent, in that familiar zone of just withholding and repressing. What kind of advice would you give, just as you have been on this journey yourself, especially over the last 2 years? What would you say to people who might be listening now who are wanting to, but maybe on the fence about sharing?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know, or we all like found out in the last year, that like talking and being vulnerable and authentic is helpful and very important. I don't know. I think as an adoptee, you kind of come out every single day, or every single Lyft ride you take, or every single person that you meet. They're like, wow, like you don't have an accent, or whatever it is, right? And it's the same thing like when you're queer too. You come out every single day, like when you meet a new colleague or whatever. So it's just like, giving yourself that grace and love and kindness to like set those boundaries up for yourself, just knowing that you don't have to disclose every little single thing about yourself when you meet someone new. And, if you feel like you're in a safe and comfortable environment with someone, like, go ahead. And if hopefully they respect that about you. And if they don't, well, you probably don't want to be talking to them in the first place, But I think the biggest thing that we can do as adoptees, whether we are queer or not, is just be kind to ourselves and like be patient with ourselves, because we have a lot of unlearning to do. And that, unfortunately, is probably going to take the rest of our lives, right?
Agreed.
Unless you guys have it all figured out and the podcast is canceled next week. That's how you cancel your podcast.
Is if we just figure everything out?
Yeah.
I would say I'm like 98% there.
I would say I'm 8 to 9% there. So I'm way behind.
No, Patrick, you're like 112% there.
No.
Yeah.
A lot of work to do. Like she said, a lot of unlearning to do.
And like she said,
I don't know. I feel
it
like
takes an entire
as
lifetime.
the co-dictator of the podcast.
Co-dictator.
Oh,
You're done.
perfect. See,
You're
that's the
done
thing.
now.
We're really 3 co-dictators.
No, I'm declaring myself
It's
as the
like,
co-dictator now. So, yeah.
That's cute.
No, don't be
gosh,
gross.
you boys.
That's hilarious.
This one. All right. Anyways, Diana, thank you so much for coming on the show and for
Moving
telling
on.
your story and helping us learn and being gracious with us. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you and say, hey, you are awesome, I'd like to chat with you more on the internet? Or is there anything that you want to plug? Obviously, of course, your book. Where can people buy that? Just as your time to blast all of the things that you want to blast.
I am a not great millennial. Instagram is really the only social media that I use. So my handle on there is
right?
D Albrecht. Maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Because if
True.
I were TikTok, I'd be more Gen Z, right? Again, third TikTok reference of the podcast.
Got it in.
I'm sorry, what is TikTok?
It's
Can
like
somebody tell me?
Beetlejuice.
Line?
A Quibi? Do you guys remember Quibi?
Oh, yeah.
Or Vine?
Quick bite.
Fine. Yeah.
RIP. They tried.
I don't know. I didn't have the attention span.
Wasn't that the whole point of it for people that don't have attention
Classic.
span?
A deep dad joke.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
he's
why
the dad joke.
That's why that was my
podcast.
dad joke. Sorry.
Anyways, sorry.
Yeah, no, my Instagram, my handle is dalbrecht3. There's like links to my website and like photography on there. Actually, I'm currently all out of placed copies.
Congrats.
I might do another run because thanks. I did like 3 batches just because I was like too scared to like be left over with product. But I printed like almost 500 copies and I sold out of all of them, which is pretty dope.
Awesome.
So maybe when I keep talking with people, they're like, oh, I want to buy a place. I'm like, so maybe I will do another run in the future. But you can still see, like, there's a link on my Instagram to like my art direction portfolio. And there's like a whole, page on my website of photos and pictures of the book and stuff like that. So people can see that there.
All right. So if you want a copy of her book, clamor for it on the internet.
Yes.
Or
Send her
just
some
blow up her
DMs.
DMs. Yeah. D Albrecht 3. Diana, thank you very much for coming on the show. It was a wonderful time, at least from my perspective. I don't know if you seem to laugh, but if you were lying to us the whole time, that's fine.
That's
with
the
that
most
being
authentic
said,
fake laugh I've ever seen.
you're so good at faking it. That's amazing. So yeah, thank you.
It's one of my strong suits, my hidden talents.
Is performance. Okay. Well, thank you very much for hanging out with. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to jump in with a food or drink.
Cool.
And
rad.
I may or may not be there. We'll find out. Okay, bye.
Roll it.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show. It's your boy KJ with Patrick and Nathan and Diana. We just got done with her interview and we're jumping into a food, and I have been deemed unworthy to try said food. So, Nathan, why don't you tell us what we're eating today?
We are eating a honey dip snack. I am saying that because that's the only English on the front that I can read. And original flavor.
Yeah, mine says original on it too.
Made by Samyang.
I have not heard of that company.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Okay,
It
hold
is
up to the
halal
camera
approved.
for the listeners at home.
Just, for
Halal?
halal. Yeah, it's approved.
Halal.
Hello.
Yeah. I don't know. I just know it looks like little hollow footballs with what's that?
Like toasted
Like
sesame
black
seeds in them?
sesame seeds.
Toasted black sesame seed in it. So
I'll say
that's
right
all
off
I
the
know.
bat, this character on here, he looks like he's wearing shoulder pads for football.
Right.
And like he's carrying a football, but he's wearing a backwards baseball cap. And he has his hand balled up in a fist, like he's getting ready to punch something. So
it's either American football or Pokemon.
Yeah, we're just combining everything into one sport.
Who needs head protection these days? Concussions, whatever, right?
Exactly. You can't see the faces of the people being injured severely with the helmets on, so you gotta take them off.
He's gonna knock the guy out first before he has an opportunity to knock his head into something. So
that makes sense.
Yep.
Don't
touch my honey dip snack.
Nice. Well, it's called Janggu for all the people who are wanting to look it up. It is Sangjiget A Yung Gyaku or JJANGGU. Janggu. I have no. Oh, Google Translate said it means crayon. So, have fun.
It also continues the tradition of being like a substantially packed item, but only having 4 servings and only being 160 calories per serving.
Wait, that whole thing is a fourth of a serving?
No, there's 4 servings in one container.
I was like, you're supposed to eat 4 bags of
That's
those?
a lot. Yeah, that's
30 grams is a
640 calories in one bag. So
that's not very much.
Nice.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
But 2 grams of protein.
Looking at the ingredients, not to spoil the ingredients at all, but there is a natural smoke flavor, a cinnamon powder, and also a green tea flavor oil. So if anyone can if you can taste those, then you guys have a very good taster.
Okay, so right off the bat for the actual food, on the package it looks like it's filled with honey. False. It is very hollow.
Oh, it looked hollow to me.
It didn't look hollow.
It kind of smells like a churro.
It does kind of smell like a churro.
It does smell like a churro.
Ooh,
I like that.
Interesting.
I like the smell.
I'm really intrigued by this.
I do too. The black sesame seeds on the picture were definitely a dramatization because the sesame seeds are not quite as apparent.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it looks like it has a single
I'm a
freckle.
fan.
This is good. I would say that if these the sesame seeds were pieces of chocolate, I would instantly like it more.
It definitely is a sweet, crunchy snack. Yeah,
it's like a cinnamon toast crunch.
The the third ingredient is white sugar. So, yeah.
It's like a wannabe cinnamon toast crunch. It almost just tastes like Chex, like the worst type of Chex cereal.
Yes.
Trying to be something it's not,
It's the worst type of Chex cereal wanting to be cinnamon
Chex.
toast crunch.
Yes. Yeah. We all have dreams,
Okay, I gotta ask, and this might be displaying my ignorance. What is Chex cereal? Have I had that before? Should I know what that is?
CHEX.
Aren't you a good Midwestern boy?
Is it like a blue box? Is that what it looks like?
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
The original flavor, I think, is a
Midwestern
blue
boy.
box.
I don't know if we can qualify him as blue or green.
I just feel like it's very Midwestern to have like a wheat or rice cereal that's plain and like you make puppy chow with it or like Chex Mix,
that makes sense.
Chex
Mix is.
Their
there
names.
You know what Chex Mix is, and yet you ask what Chex was.
These classic staples of American food. I
forgot about the mix. I think that, I like Life cereal. That's my favorite cereal. Plain Life. So you could not get more Midwestern.
That's
pretty boring.
Yeah.
The most boring, no sugar additive, nothing else. Just most boring.
No zhuzhing. Just amazing. For the listeners at home, they opened it like Americans. I didn't hear any note about whether there was a proper open.
There's not. I don't see one at least.
But it seemed like it opened pretty easily, which I think is unique. Like I feel like most Korean snacks have the like open in the corner, like you rip it off, whatever. This opened just like a
Or they have that
regular bag
strip,
of-
like that
American
seal
bag of,
strip that you pull off. I feel like we've had a lot of those that are hidden on the package.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Remember
yeah,
when we complained that
yeah.
we
Okay,
we
gotcha.
didn't like the Korean bugles that we had or whatever that was, just because it was
Mhm.
they were big
Mhm.
puffy triangles, and you couldn't put your fingers on them.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That was you.
You're
Okay.
ridiculous. This is a great visual
know,
bit
sorry.
for an audio
I actually
podcast.
be
put them-
interested.
For the listeners, I put them on my fingers. So
Easy access.
Yeah, but he gets a real cute grin whenever he shows it off.
Just
And then I
chuck them
dropped
off
them.
with his fingers.
that's okay.
Instead of making like a pasta necklace, we could make
Ooh, yeah.
a necklace out of these. You know?
I would have put these in some milk.
Junggu.
I think that would be an interesting
yeah,
second.
I would eat this as cereal
Yeah,
for
definitely
sure.
would be good as a cereal.
Can you taste a smoke flavor or a green
No.
tea?
Smoke.
Anything? That's surprising because, like, when you were listing those ingredients, I was like, okay, this should be like a savory, salty kind of thing, and you're like, oh, it tastes like a churro. I'm like, well, that doesn't.
Yeah,
compute
I mean,
with my brain
especially
at
because
all.
the cinnamon is like almost the last ingredient on here. But it's definitely apparent that it has cinnamon in it.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
and I totally read that wrong. It says a raising agent. I totally thought that it was like raising agent. I don't know why I read it.
Yeah,
that way,
like
but-
a baking soda or something. Right?
Yeah, I know, but it's these are pretty good.
So
Yeah.
Samyang honey dip.
I think
snack, Junggu.
Now
I wonder
don't
why
don't
it's
hate
called
me
that.
for anyone listening on this one, but I actually think I like these better than honey potato chips.
The honey
Oh,
butter
really?
chips.
Honey butter chips.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
KJ
really
is
interesting.
furious
I
that
think
he's not
no.
eating these now.
I literally, it doesn't even matter how good they are. I think that's a dirty lie, and I can't.
Why do you
I'm
believe
think
sorry.
that?
I think
Break it
these are
down.
better. The honey butter chips are just for me. They're just a little too too different, or something about them that I just don't like. This is just more familiar to me. I think it's the cinnamon in it. I could eat these a lot more often. So, yeah.
That is bonkers. Okay. I just did a Google search to see if I could try to find Junggu just by searching it with the Hangul, and I came up with this character who is a Japanese manga character named Crayon Shin-chan.
Wait, what?
Oh,
his name
yeah.
is Crayon?
That little guy. Is that supposed to be
Yeah,
him?
I guess so.
It doesn't
I
look
don't
like
know
him.
if it's like a spin-off of this Korean or
Got the
sorry, this
eyebrows
Japanese
going
manga
on.
character, but yeah. So
I think that's just
mean,
manga in general.
Why
AKA
is his name
Shin-chan.
Crayon? Is my next
So-
question. My next and only question.
I don't know.
Because now I have our first baby name. So shout out to my soon to be wife when we have our first child, whenever that is. Crayon.
You're gonna name him
In,
Crayon.
in
Oh,
parentheses next to their actual name.
Wang Junggu. Wait, someone hold the bag up. Am I missing Korean? It's just not on the what? This bag is straight up lying to me. This one has Wang in
Oh.
front of it.
Interesting.
This is all just a
That's
conspiracy theory to
interesting.
mess with KJ.
What the junk? So, I feel lied to.
Well, I wonder if like a large batch went out, or like one shipment went out with the wrong labeling on it, and we all just got it.
No, I mean there's some that are Junggu and some
Maybe
that are
it's
Wang
not the
Junggu.
original flavor.
What's the difference? Is there an
I
additive
mean, it
of
says
flavoring
original.
or something missing from it? Maybe. This says original, so
Yeah, I don't know.
Did you see anything that says other flavors? Because if this is original honey dipped, what would be like a different flavor, like cheese or
cheese.
spicy? I don't know.
I would not want this to taste like cheese.
No, because this one also says original, but the dude looks like he lost his.
That is the sequel to this bag. That is
That's he actually he actually got that concussion.
Yeah.
The guy knocked him out before he
Yeah.
He ran into somebody or he was stealing these delicious chips, and they caught up with him.
So Honey Fingers looks to be the English name.
Well, there you go, Nathan. Meant for your
honey
fingers.
yeah.
fingers
No,
instead
no.
of butterfingers, honey fingers.
Oh yeah.
I'm still team honey butter chips. I just love a potato chip.
That's
you
what
know,
I'm talking about.
I'm gonna have
I
to
think,
go.
Do you
I think
guys
most
need-
people are. I think I might be a minimal.
You're an anomaly.
Yeah, I am.
You're so unique, Nathan.
I'm gonna go back and listen.
I go
to that
against
episode.
the grain. I
I'm
don't
gonna
like
see
what
what you
everyone
said
else
about
likes.
honey butter chips, then put it in this episode.
We said they were perfect. They were practically manna
That
from
was also
heaven.
about 3 in the morning. Because didn't we do that on Minju's episode? Or no, that was the Kosume cracker.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Oh, that one's a 5
Oh,
out of
gosh.
5.
That was
Also,
good.
Kosume crackers are amazing.
That was good.
Yeah.
This one
All
I
right.
definitely like. And it's good with coffee.
Get into ratings. Everything tastes good with coffee.
Or
for you,
salt.
Nathan.
All right, ratings. Nathan, tell us what you think. What would
Like I
you
said,
rate this on 4
I
out of
like
5
these.
honeys? Wait,
I like these better than the others, so I'm going to say 5 out of 5. They fit on my finger. They taste good. They're crunchy. I'm going to have it with milk right after this, and it's going to be delicious.
They fit on my
You're going
finger.
straight for the milk after this.
Going straight for the milk after this.
All right.
Heck, I'm very tempted to throw them in my coffee right now.
So you're giving it 5 out of 5 crayons.
Yeah.
All right.
Diana, what about you?
Oh, I don't know. I think I'm the wrong person to ask because inherently I'm not like a big snack person. So I'm going to give these 3.5 stars because I do like the honey butter and my tteokbokki snackies better than this.
Great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
3.5
Yeah.
still
Hot
pretty
take.
good though, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's edible, you know? I'll
I can eat it.
I would not pass up if somebody was offering them.
That's the new quote on the packaging. It's edible. Diana Albrecht.
I like it. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 because it is edible. And I just really like the story the package is telling me. And I do think this would make for a really good cereal. So I think once I do that, it'll solidify the 4. KJ, what do you think?
Nice. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. You know what? I think it's really fun to play with. It's got a solid crunch. I'm confused by the flavor and then the ingredients listed. So that's kind of like, that doesn't feel like very transparent to me. Obviously, I know this is a processed snack, but yeah. So, and then you can check back on our Instagram 2 days after this episode comes out, and then you can actually see my real rating. But 4 out
I
of
was
5.
gonna say,
I
if you
think
never
is
told
accurate
anyone that you
for
didn't
what
eat
I'm
those or
assuming.
try these, they never would have known because that was a
Yeah.
great rating.
I mean, except for the fact that like this whole segment opened
That's
with
what I was
doesn't have a
saying.
snack.
We didn't say that.
So
In hindsight,
you
if
know,
we did
there's
not say that.
Oh yeah. Well,
Cut it out. We're
just
good.
cut it out.
We're all about
Just cut it out.
transparency and authenticity here on the Janchi
That's
Show, right?
true.
Yep.
So we
Yep.
would not lie
Yep.
to
Yep.
your listeners, right?
Mhm.
That's true. That's why we never cut anything.
Oh, God.
Never cut anything.
They're very long episodes.
They're fine. They're a fine length.
Alrighty. Yep. All right. Well, that is it for our food segment. Diana, one more time for the listeners at home, where can people find you on the internet?
Find me on the gram at dalbrecht3.
Nice. And if people want to get a copy of your book placed, what is the best way to clamor for that to happen? Because it's not current, like it's out of
Yeah, it is.
It's in
It
between
It
runs
is.
right now.
Probably send me a DM, or you can look up my name on the internet and my portfolio, my website will come up, and you can shoot me an email through that. The more people I get to like annoy me with the fact that they want the book, the more likely I will be able to do another print run.
Okay, so what if I annoy you every day until I get a copy of the book?
You know, it could
That
work for
also
you.
work? You
I
run,
might
like, a
need
single-
at least one other person to annoy me every single day.
Okay, someone else join me in annoying
Oh, God.
Diana
Two
so that
more
we can get a
copies,
copy
maybe.
of the book placed. We have
More
declared
copies.
it will cost approximately $200.
Yeah,
per
no,
copy.
I for context, I need to do at least like 100 or 150 would be my ideal to make it like
Nope.
cost effective.
I'm getting copy
So-
number 1.
100 people.
100 people.
Come at me.
100 people. DM her
Technically,
right now.
be copy 501.
Get out of here with your math.
Okay.
All right. Well, now that Patrick is gone, you can find him on the internet at Patrick in the World or Parmstrong on Clubhouse or patrickintheworld.me on his blog/website. Is that right? Am I forgetting anything?
That's right.
I said that from
sounds
far
right.
away.
It's good.
Yeah, from very far away. His
And then I
whisper
got really close.
carries. He has an incredibly powerful stage whisper.
If people know me and they know that I'm loud, so my whisper obviously
Alright.
would be loud.
Nice. Oh wait, I didn't even plug the Janchi Show. Whatever, we'll do that after this.
I'm the most
You can find me
important,
at KJ Roki, wherever I want to be found on the internet.
Nathan?
You can find the Janchi Show at
What?
Janchi at justlikemedia.com.
No, Janchi Show.
I said Janchi Show.
No, you just said Janchi.
Oh, that was
That's where you can send it. All right, send us an email at janchishow@justlikemedia.com. Find us on the internet at Janchi Show on all the places that the Janchi Show wants to be found. You can go to janchishow.com/support to figure out how to support the show. You can find Nathan at @Nowak or Nowak Photo, and that is it. Right?
That is it.
Yes.
All right, we did it.
Thank you, KJ.
We finished another episode. We are locking up another
Why are we still
episode.
doing this? We are running out of lives. Send us some quarters so that we can continue doing the show.
We are.
Oh, that's what you meant when you said that last time.
Yeah,
I didn't.
like
I
video
didn't get the
game.
video game reference of that.
Dude.
Now I understand.
Come on.
All right.
All right.
Well,
Okay.
catch us on the next video game.
I caught up. I'm here.
Great. Okay, well, now that you caught up, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.